She stood in the marble hallway holding a mop, staring at the man who destroyed her family. He didn't recognize her. Why would he? To him, she was invisible. Just another black woman in a uniform, there to clean up his messes. But Amara knew exactly who he was. She'd spent 3 years planning this moment. 3 years waiting. And now, standing in the sprawling mansion of the Whitmore family, she was finally close enough to make them pay. But here's what she didn't plan for. She didn't plan for Marcus Whitmore, the golden boy himself, to look at her like she mattered. To speak to her like she was human. To smile at her like he actually saw her. And that was going to complicate everything. This is the story of a woman who took a job as a maid not to earn money, but to destroy the family that took everything from her. It's about revenge dressed in a uniform. About secrets hidden behind closed doors. About what happens when the person you're supposed to hate becomes the only person who sees you. And before this story ends, someone's life will be ruined. The only question is whose. If you're here for surface-level romance, you're in the wrong place. This goes deeper, darker, more real. So if you want to see how this plays out, hit that like button right now, subscribe, and turn on notifications because you don't want to miss this. Let's begin. Amara checked her phone one last time before walking through the service entrance. The screen showed a photo she'd looked at 1,000 times. Her father. Smiling. Proud. Wearing his only suit on the day he signed the contract with Whitmore Industries. That was 8 years ago. 6 months later, he was dead. The official story? James Cole had embezzled funds from the company and committed suicide when he was about to be exposed. The Whitmores held a press conference. They expressed disappointment. They talked about betrayal and broken trust. They made sure everyone knew that James Cole was a thief who had taken advantage of their generosity. But Amara knew the truth. Her father was meticulous. Honest to a fault. He didn't steal anything. Someone at Whitmore Industries had set him up, destroyed the evidence that could clear his name, and let him take the fall for their crimes. And when the pressure became too much, when reporters camped outside their small apartment and former friends crossed the street to avoid them, her father couldn't take it anymore. They found him in his car. Amara was 17. Now she was 25. She had a business degree she'd earned while working 3 jobs. She had a plan she'd refined over countless sleepless nights. And she had a fake reference from an employment agency that had gotten her hired as temporary staff at the Whitmore estate. The woman who conducted her phone interview never asked many questions. They needed someone to start immediately. The regular maid had quit without notice, something about the family being difficult. Amara had smiled when she heard that. Good. Let them be difficult. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to find proof. The estate was even bigger than she'd imagined. Sprawling grounds. A main house that looked like it belonged in a European palace. Guest houses. Tennis courts. A pool that could fit her entire childhood apartment building. This was what her father's reputation had paid for. This obscene display of wealth was built on lies that destroyed good people. You must be the new girl. Amara turned. An older woman stood behind her, arms crossed, expression skeptical. Mrs. Chin, the head housekeeper. They'd spoken briefly on the phone. Yes, ma'am. Amara Williams. She'd changed her last name for this. Cole was too risky. Someone might remember. You're late. Amara checked her watch. She was 3 minutes early. But she didn't argue. I apologize. Won't happen again. Mrs. Chin studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Come. I'll show you your duties. The family expects perfection. No exceptions. You touch something, it should look like you were never there. You see something, you forget it immediately. You hear something, it goes in one ear and out the other. Understand? Perfectly. Good. Mr. Whitmore Sr. is in Singapore on business. Mrs. Whitmore is at their Connecticut property. You'll be dealing primarily with Marcus. Amara's heart rate spiked. Marcus Whitmore. The son. 28 years old according to her research. Stanford educated. Vice President of Whitmore Industries Technology Division. By all accounts, his father's golden child and future heir to the empire. Also, according to corporate records, she'd hacked into using a fake login, one of 3 people who had access to the financial files during the time her father worked there. He's particular, Mrs. Chin continued as they walked through the service corridors. Doesn't like people in his space when he's working. Prefers his coffee black, no sugar, brought to his office at exactly 7 a.m. His gym clothes should be laid out by 6. Fresh towels in his bathroom before he wakes. Basically, anticipate his needs before he has them. Sounds demanding. Sounds like someone who pays very well and expects value for his money. Mrs. Chen's tone was sharp. If you have a problem with that, there's the door. Amara shook her head. No problem at all. They spent the next 2 hours going through the mansion. Amara memorized everything. Which rooms were off limits. Which hallways had security cameras. Which doors stayed locked. The office was on the 2nd floor, West Wing. That's where she needed to get to. That's where the answers would be. But she had to be patient. Careful. One wrong move and she'd be out, her only chance gone. She met Marcus Whitmore at 6:45 the next morning. Amara had arrived early, wanting to map out the house before the family woke. She was in the kitchen, preparing his coffee exactly as Mrs. Chin had specified, when she heard footsteps behind her. "You're new." His voice was different than she expected. Not cold or dismissive. Just observant. Curious, even. She turned slowly, taking him in for the first time in person. Tall. Dark hair that looked carelessly styled, but probably cost more than her monthly rent. Sharp jawline. Expensive running clothes that somehow made him look both casual and completely put together. But it was his eyes that caught her off guard. Dark brown. Intelligent. Looking directly at her like he was actually seeing a person, not a servant. She hated that she noticed. "Yes, sir. I started yesterday." Amara. Marcus. He extended his hand. She stared at it for a second too long. In her research, in all her planning, she hadn't prepared for this. For him to introduce himself like an equal. For him to act like her name mattered. It was a small thing. A gesture that probably meant nothing to him. But it disarmed her completely. She shook his hand. His grip was firm. Warm. "Coffee's almost ready," she said, pulling back. "Mrs. Chin said you take it black. She gave you the full briefing then." He smiled slightly. "Don't let her intimidate you. She does that to everyone new. It's basically her interview technique." "I'll survive." "I'm sure you will." He leaned against the counter, watching her pour the coffee into an expensive-looking mug. "So what's your story?" "My story? Everyone has one. What brings you to domestic work?" "You seem." He paused, searching for the word. "Overqualified." Her hands stilled on the coffee pot. This was dangerous territory. She'd prepared a background story, kept it simple and forgettable. But now, with him actually looking at her, actually asking, the lies felt heavier than she'd anticipated. "I needed work. This pays well." "That's not a story. That's a transaction." She met his eyes. Maybe that's all it needs to be. Something shifted in his expression. Not offense. Interest. Like she'd said something unexpected, and he wanted to figure out why. Fair enough. He took the coffee she handed him. Their fingers brushed for a fraction of a second. "Thank you, Amara." The way he said her name, like he was actually going to remember it, made something uncomfortable twist in her chest. He left for his morning run, and she stood in the kitchen for a full minute afterward, angry at herself. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. He was supposed to be entitled. Dismissive. Easy to hate. He wasn't supposed to be human. She couldn't afford for him to be human. Over the next week, Amara established her routine. Wake at 5. Prepare Marcus's coffee and gym setup. Clean the common areas while he was out running. Dust his office quickly, efficiently, while cataloging everything she saw. The desk was always locked. The computer required biometric login. But she was patient. She'd find a way. Marcus was gone most days, at the Whitmore Industries headquarters downtown. When he was home, he spent hours in his office on calls that she could hear through the door as she worked in the hallway. Business deals. Acquisitions. Strategy sessions. He spoke with authority, with confidence, like someone who'd never questioned his place in the world. Of course he hadn't. Everything had been handed to him. But there were moments that didn't fit her narrative. Like when she overheard him on the phone with his father, voice tight with frustration, saying, "I know what the board wants, but that doesn't make it right." Or when she found him late one night in the study, surrounded by documents, looking exhausted and something close to defeated. He'd looked up, seen her in the doorway, and instead of dismissing her, he'd asked if she wanted coffee too. She'd said no. She should have said no. But she'd found herself sitting across from him at 2 in the morning, both of them with coffee mugs, talking about nothing important. He'd asked about her childhood. She'd given him the sanitized version. Happy family. Small town. Normal life. All lies. He'd told her about growing up in this house, about the weight of expectations, about never being sure if people liked him or the Whitmore name. Must be hard, she'd said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Being rich and powerful. He'd smiled, but there was sadness in it. You'd be surprised. She'd left quickly after that. Angry at him for being likable. Angrier at herself for almost liking him. 3 weeks in, Amara finally got her chance. Marcus was in Seattle for a conference. Mrs. Chin had the day off. The house was empty except for Amara and the security guard who spent most of his time in the gatehouse watching sports on his phone. She'd been watching Marcus's routine with his office. He locked the desk, but kept the key in a wooden box on the bookshelf. Thought it was hidden. It wasn't. She'd seen him retrieve it twice when he thought no one was looking. Her hands shook as she unlocked the desk drawer. Files. So many files. Financial records. Contracts. Correspondence. She pulled out her phone and started photographing everything, working methodically, forcing herself to be thorough even though every instinct screamed at her to rush. Most of it was current business. Nothing from 8 years ago. Nothing about her father. She was starting to panic, wondering if she'd gotten it wrong, if the information wasn't here after all, when she found a locked compartment at the back of the drawer. It took her 20 minutes to pick it. Inside was a single folder. Old. The label was in handwriting she didn't recognize. Cole, Confidential, 2017. Her father's name. Her breath stopped. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside were documents she'd never seen. Emails. Memos. Financial transfers. And then, 3 pages in, she found it. An internal communication from 8 years ago, marked for destruction but somehow preserved. It was from Richard Whitmore, Marcus's father, to his chief financial officer. Redirect the Singapore losses to Cole's accounts. Make it look organic. We need a clean narrative before the IPO. He's low-level enough that no one will ask questions. Activate the contingency. Below that, a response. Understood. We'll handle personally. What about Cole himself? Richard's reply was brief. Problem will resolve itself. Amara's vision blurred. She read it again. Then again. This was it. This was the proof she'd spent 3 years searching for. Her father hadn't stolen anything. He'd been set up deliberately, methodically, by Richard Whitmore himself. They'd destroyed him to protect their IPO, to hide their own losses, and they'd known exactly what they were doing. Problem will resolve itself. They'd known he would break under the pressure. Maybe they'd even counted on it. She photographed every page, her hands steadier now, rage giving her clarity. She was putting the folder back when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy. Quick. Coming toward the office. Marcus. He wasn't supposed to be back until tomorrow. She shoved the folder into the drawer, closed it, locked it, returned the key to the box. But she wasn't fast enough. The door opened just as she turned away from the desk. Marcus stood in the doorway, luggage still in hand, staring at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. What are you doing in here? His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that preceded storms. Her mind raced. A dozen explanations. A dozen excuses. But she'd learned long ago that the best lies lived close to the truth. Cleaning. She gestured to the feather duster in her other hand, thanking God she'd brought it with her. Mrs. Chen said to deep clean while you were away. Mrs. Chen knows this room is off limits. She didn't mention that. I find that hard to believe. Amara met his eyes. This was it. The moment where everything either fell apart or held together. She couldn't look guilty. Couldn't look nervous. Had to sell it completely. Then ask her, she said simply. I was doing my job. If I wasn't supposed to be in here, someone should have told me. He studied her. She could see the calculation happening behind his eyes. Suspicion warring with something else. Maybe the weeks of normal interaction. Maybe the late-night coffee conversation. Maybe the fact that she'd never given him a reason not to trust her. Finally, he stepped into the room. Set down his luggage. Walked past her to the desk. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. He checked the desk drawers. Pulled on each one. They were all locked. He checked the key box. It was exactly where it should be. He looked around the office, searching for anything out of place. Found nothing. Because she'd been careful. Because she'd planned for this. Because she was her father's daughter, and he'd taught her to be meticulous. Marcus turned back to her. I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some sensitive situations at work. Made me paranoid. She should have accepted the apology and left. Should have taken her win and disappeared before he asked more questions. But something in his tone caught her attention. Stress. Real stress. The kind that came from carrying something heavy. Everything okay? She asked before she could stop herself. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Would you believe me if I said I just found out my father might have done something unforgivable and I don't know what to do about it? The world tilted. What do you mean? Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Marcus sat on the edge of the desk, running a hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. Lost. And for some reason, he was choosing to talk to her about it. There's an old case. From before I had real authority in the company. A man who worked for us was accused of embezzlement. He killed himself. Everyone said he was guilty. Case closed. But I was going through some old files in Seattle, prepping for an audit, and I found discrepancies. Things that don't add up. Transfers that shouldn't exist. And I'm starting to think. He stopped. Shook his head. I'm starting to think he might have been innocent. That someone set him up. And if that's true, if we destroyed an innocent man. He looked at her. Really looked at her. And Amara realized with horrible clarity that she'd made a catastrophic mistake. She'd spent so long seeing Marcus as the enemy, as Richard's son, and therefore guilty by association, that she'd never considered the possibility that he might not know. That he might be just as much in the dark as everyone else. That he might be a victim too. What was his name? She asked quietly. The man who died. Cole. James Cole. The room was too small. The air too thin. She needed to leave. Needed to think. Needed to figure out what this meant for everything she'd planned. I'm sorry, she managed. That sounds complicated. Yeah. He stood up. Sorry for dumping that on you. I haven't been able to talk to anyone about it. Can't exactly tell my father I think he might be a murderer. Is that what you think? I don't know what I think. But I'm going to find out. There was steel in his voice now. Determination. If someone in my family did this, if we destroyed an innocent man and his family, I'm going to make it right. Whatever it takes. Amara left the office in a daze. Walked through the mansion on autopilot. Found herself in the staff bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Everything had just changed. Marcus didn't know. He wasn't complicit. He was trying to uncover the same truth she was. And now they were on a collision course, both searching for answers about her father, neither knowing the other's real identity. She pulled out her phone. Looked at the photographs she'd taken. The proof of Richard Whitmore's guilt was right there. She could leak it. Go to the press. Destroy the Whitmore family the way they'd destroyed hers. But if she did, Marcus would know she'd been lying. Would know she'd been in his office, in his desk, stealing files. Would know everything was a deception. Why did that matter? Why did she care what he thought? She didn't. She couldn't. He was still a Whitmore. Still benefited from the empire built on her father's grave. But then she remembered the look on his face when he talked about making it right. The genuine horror at the possibility that his family had done something unforgivable. The determination to find the truth even if it destroyed everything he knew. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. We need to talk about your new job. You're playing a dangerous game. A friend. Amara's blood went cold. Someone knew. Someone had been watching. But who? And how much did they know? She was still staring at the message when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Marcus stood in the hallway, and his expression had changed completely. No more warmth. No more trust. His face was granite. I lied before, he said quietly. I know exactly why you're here. And we need to have a very long conversation about who you really are. So let me ask you something. What would you do? Amara has the proof she came for. The evidence that her father was innocent, that Richard Whitmore destroyed him deliberately. She can destroy the Whitmore family right now. Get her revenge. Make them pay for everything they took from her. But Marcus knows something. Maybe not everything, but enough. And now she's standing in that hallway with nowhere to run. No more lies to hide behind, facing the one person she never expected to care about. Does she come clean? Does she fight? Does she run? And here's the real question. The one that's going to eat at you until you watch part 2. That text message. You're playing a dangerous game. Who sent it? Who else knows Amara's real identity? And what are they planning? Because here's what I haven't told you yet. Amara isn't the only person in that house with secrets. Marcus has been hiding something too. Something big. Something that's going to change everything when it comes out. And the person who sent that text? They're about to make a move that will put both Amara and Marcus in real danger. The kind of danger that ends with someone not walking away. Part 2 drops in soon. And I promise you, the twists you're about to see will make this first part look simple. We're going to find out who Amara really is. What Marcus has been hiding. Why someone's threatening her. And what Richard Whitmore did that's even worse than what we already know. Because that file Amara found? It's not the full story. Not even close. If you want to see how this ends, if you need to know what happens when Amara and Marcus finally stop lying to each other, you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Drop a comment telling me whose side you're on, because this is about to get messy. And share this with someone. Because a story this good deserves to be seen. See you in part 2, where everything you think you know is about to get flipped upside down.